As we take you now to our conversation, Malesela Teffo has been disbarred as a legal practitioner. The High Court in Pretoria has ordered Teffo to surrender his certificate of enrolment to the court. It all comes after the Legal Practice Council brought an application before the court for Teffo to be either suspended or struck from the role. In its application, the council argued that there had been numerous complaints against Teffo, some relating to the misuse of clients' funds and misleading the court. Until recently, Teffo represented accused number 1 to 4 in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. He later withdrew his services in July.
The following order is made. 1. The respondent, Advocate Malesela Teffo, is hereby removed from the role of legal practitioners. 2. The respondent must surrender and deliver his certificate of enrollment as a legal practitioner to the registrar of this honorable court. 3. In the event of the respondent failing to comply with the terms of this order, detailed in paragraph 2, within 2 weeks from the date of this order, the sheriff of the district in which the certificate is be authorized and directed to take possession of the certificate to hand it to the register of the honorable court. The respondent is prohibited from handling or operating on his banking accounts used in receiving monies for the client. 5. Johan van Staden, the director of the Gauteng Provincial Office of the applicant or his successor as such, in his capacity as such, be appointed as a curator bonus to administer and control the banking accounts of the respondent, including accounts relating to insolvent and deceased estate and any estate under curatorship connected to the respondent's practice as a legal practitioner, and including, if applicable, also separate banking accounts opened and kept by the respondent at the Bank of the Republic of South Africa.
Right. For more on that, the Legal Practitioners Council spokesperson Kabelo Letebele joins us now to talk about some of the reaction around that. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's a scathing judgment. Advocate, Malesela Teffo has been struck off the roll of legal practitioners. Very severe punishment. But of course, it was all a build-up from 2019. How did this process unfold?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. This process began in 2019. That's when we as the Legal Practice Council started receiving complaints. And the complaints that we have been receiving have been continuing in 2019 right up to this year. So that really suggested to us, firstly, that there is repeat behaviors that and we were picking up as investigations were going on that some of the cases were very serious, assault, misappropriation of funds, and all the items that the judge outlined today. So this has been a process that began in 2019 right up until now, including investigations, giving him the opportunity to respond, and he obviously hasn't.
In reaching the decision, we heard the court underlying the attributes of the legal profession, reiterating the image and standing of the profession, which is judged by the conduct and reputation of all its members. Just yesterday, we saw Teffo barging into the High Court, trying to force his way into the judge's chambers as the Senzo Meyiwa trial was underway. Now, of the 22 complaints that were brought forward and scrutinized, what stood out for you as the Legal Practice Council?
Sure. A number of them were serious. And looking at the list here, assault of a police officer was one complaint that we looked into. Breaching of a court order, misleading court, failure to cooperate with the LPC investigations. Legal practitioners are required by law to cooperate with the LPC as the regulator when there are such matters. Misappropriation of funds. So there were quite a number of serious complaints that have been coming in since 2019.
You say, just before we got into this question, you said that Teffo has not responded. What would make it, fit for him to respond, and what would it essentially mean for the judgment?
So at this point, because a judgment has been granted in court, the process, the court has made a determination. However, the process that we normally follow is that when we get a complaint, our team would assess to see if there is a prima facie case for the legal practitioner to respond to. So in other words, our attorneys internally would look at the rules, that look at the Legal Practice Act and say, is there merit to the case that we've received? Thereafter, then it would go through various stages, investigations and disciplinary and so on. And at every point, the legal practitioner that has a case to answer has an opportunity to present his side of the story, to present evidence, to convince us as the Legal Practice Council and our investigations committee that there is no merit to the complaints that have been brought forth. That is what Advocate Malesela Teffo during our processes failed to do.
And we also saw that there was also a scornful letter that Teffo wrote in July and addressed it to Advocate Baloy, in which he averred that he had been experiencing harassment from the courts, the police, the Minister of Police, the prosecution, including the Director of Public Prosecutions in Johannesburg. How was that handled?
Look, that is one of the matters that were included as we were presenting the case to the court. Essentially, from our perspective, it really underscored our view that he is not a fit and proper person to be a legal practitioner. We took a view that, that didn't show decorum. As required of legal practitioners. So yes, it was one of the matters that we did present to the court.
What action will be taken should Advocate Teffo fail to comply with the time frame of the order?
So straight away, he has to hand over his certificate of admission. A curator from the Legal Practice Council has been appointed to look into the trust accounts and other critical matters from his practice. Should he opt not to, it would be a court matter. So one of the measures that can be taken is that the sheriff of the court then can take various remedial actions, and the court will have to decide if then there is a further contravention of direct court orders.
Yeah, and perhaps going back again to that letter, to the response, should he respond and the matter be scrutinized? Could we see this process reversed should his response be of substance and regarded within the court?
As you and me are speaking, he's been struck off. So the court has made a ruling. Remember that the LPC's power lies in our disciplinary process and in our disciplinary interventions. So that process, as the saying goes, the cat has already been bolted. So yeah. Over time, the matters were presented. He had an opportunity to respond to the complaints. We then went to court and applied and asked court to strike him off, and that's been granted. What he can do now, he can either appeal or he can at some point apply for readmission. But again, with both those interventions, the Legal Practice Council will be requested to have a view, and he would need to convince, in particular with applying for a readmission, he'd need to convince the court as well as the Legal Practice Council that he's reformed and that he can be a fit and proper legal practitioner, and that chances of repetition are unlikely. So there is quite a tough process that he'd need to follow in order to reverse the situation as it stands.
Okay, Kabelo Letebele, thank you for breaking that down. A spokesperson for the Legal Practice Council, giving us a sense of what it all means for Advocate Malesela Teffo to be struck off the roll of advocates.